Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a very special episode today. Not really for any other reason other than that I don't have a good bait and switch, which is a thing that I often do on this podcast, where I start screaming about something. Like last time, for example, I was yelling about what maybe you would think was the Ohio train derailment thing, but I was actually talking about the goddamn vultures of the music industry digging up Wayne Static's corpse one more time for a very awful and bad cover.
I still haven't checked that out.
Terrible lie. You should. It's not good. And I had so many friends.
I know it's not good. I know it's going to be really bad, and that's why I want to hear it.
The Shayla Nicoles of the world and the people being like, it's so nice to hear another new Static X song. It's like, it's bad. It's just bad. Just shut up. I mean, it makes you happy because you're too attached to this one idea of some kind of artist, despite the fact that there's a guy dressed up as him on this live tour that sounds fucking close enough. So is it that special? I don't really think so. The other thing that I enjoyed was, and he's for sure listening to this, Brad Birch, the Ohio Bigfoot.
Yeah.
He had messaged me that he lives in Ohio and has been to Peabody's many times. He said he was crying laughing at like the shit we were talking about, everybody.
I think I saw that comment.
Yeah, he sent me like a personal one and that one and stuff, and I do.
Did you start?
Yeah, what's up?
I have to show you something amazing, but I don't know if it should be on the TikTok.
Well, it should be on the. Well, could you? My wife is upstairs asking me if she needs to show me something on TikTok. Can you give me a vague description? Come on down.
Can you just show the whole class?
Well, maybe you should just tell me what kind of movie you want to watch.
It's a video called Dance Party.
It's a video called Dance Party. Okay, is there anything bad about it?
It's a paraplegic guy, Bobby.
Please come here and show that to us right now. I'm just going to say this is the mushroom ketamine drop. All right, hold on. What do we got here?
It's live right now.
So it's kind of like the Rammstein video.
He's having a good time. So yeah, there's a paraplegic dance party on TikTok Live, and that guy he's got a pretty cool looking setup wherever he's dancing.
I know.
Dancing, but like he's grooving. But that's the thing. TikTok is all the money is in lives now, and it's like that motherfucker just figured out that it's like he's not some OnlyFans chick with big boobs a bouncing. He is somebody that you're going to watch and probably send things to. This guy has got his shit figured out.
Yeah.
What is it called? Let's give him a shout out. If you're on TikTok at all,
Hold on. It is.
you should support this guy, or at least go laugh, because you know what? Those views are giving him money. So whatever you want to do. Bobby Ogurek. So Bobby, like you'd spell it, the Ogurek. Ogurek. I almost said zero. I actually love how screwed up my brain is. Look at that guy go. Hell yeah. And he's just rocking the 80s jams too, and not even like...
I just wanted you to share it with the class.
I think that people should probably go look at that. Yeah, hopefully you remember what I said.
It.
Even though I spelled his name Zero-E-O-R-G.
You think you did, but you didn't.
Yeah, I know. I did it rightly enough. O-eck.
Yeah.
O-eck. But... yeah, so like, I am like a little bit weirder than usual, but maybe a little bit better than usual. And this has been a long time coming. I do want to talk about this. I want to also say, Brad Birch, your participation in our bullshit is very much appreciated, and you are part of the things that I like about Ohio. You're up there with Foxy Shazam. You were there at some of the most insane, out of control shows. And as just a brief. So we made fun of Ohio a lot last time, but the thing is like, I should be forthright with, there's a lot of internal stuff that I forget isn't common knowledge. And now that people actually watch this, I can't just not care. So in the world of touring, as long as you are me, and have experienced the things that I've experienced, and in one band and then in another band and then through friends, there's places that are like notoriously fun to go. And with, Blue Felix, it's obvious, but also with SMB and stuff, Michigan was always a great time in both bands, weirdly enough. Like, it's just a place where the biggest, craziest shows happen, and later on in Blue Felix, we play the Machine Shop, which is famous. and like pack it, which is insane. And the guys that run it all like this and stuff, and they're like awesome. Yet they are a biker association that you would not want to cross, but it makes the place all the much better because as dangerous as Flint is, everybody minds their goddamn manners in that place, and we all know why. And it's because the Zink brothers, they give you all the chances in the world to be a nice guy, and we're nice guys, so it all worked out. If you're not, it probably doesn't work out so good. And that's maybe how a lot of things should run. And then also the other one is like, Florida. Like, Blue Felix, it didn't happen as much, but SMB, Peter, Retaro bought everything. Big connection there, big shows with mindless self-indulgence there, always a wild time. But, I will say, in Redemption, Ohio's kind of an unsung hero because, it is where we met Foxy, but we had played shows not even with them in Cleveland at that Peabody's place that were like big shows. Like shows where at least the smaller 7th Street room was packed to the ceiling, which, if you've ever toured before, when you're not only playing to the annoyed sound guy and literally one drunk that came by accident, you're doing fucking great if you're not in your hometown. And it's like, so having a thing where there's like 300 people stacked on top of each other is nothing to sneeze at. And somewhere with a good sound system, get out of here. So yeah, Ohio was a place like that. Honestly, it's a big state. There's multiple cities, but Cleveland, yeah, they had some good shows there. And I don't, and that is where originally, again, we met the Ohio Bigfoot, who watches the podcast to this day. And I'm not going to go through all the states. I'm just saying that I forget sometimes because now there's been some time in between where Ohio is a good. Indiana was really good for SMB, not so much Blue Felix. Indiana was weird. We were like actually famous there. Who knows why? But that's just a little recap, a little housekeeping, as it were. Old business is old business, and new business is not until next quarter. That's my Addams Family joke. So, yeah. I've been getting ketamine infusions, and that is what we were going to talk about. Now, we've spoken about it before a little bit, because Meredith is old hat at this, in that she has done it before I have done it. I probably did ketamine illegally before you got into the actual, medical version of it, but that doesn't really count, because boy, oh boy, is it not the same thing. If you think that you've snorted ketamine powder and or done the legal nasal spray that you can kind of weasel your way into having. That's the difference between poking a oney and eating a 5,000 milligram weed brownie. Like now I can't handle any of that. Like that's all anxiety for me, but I just mean that's what comparing the two is like. Comparing the IV under careful watch of medical professionals to like, oh, I snorted a bump with, Pauly Shore and Macaulay Culkin at a club once. Like, no, it is not the same. It is.
Those would be the two that you would do that with, though.
That is why what I said was funny, I think. Or at least poignant in some way. Yeah, no, but like getting mainlined a legal therapy load of pure party monster into your brain is a hell of a different situation. And also, not mixed with other weird kinds of crap. And everything beautiful that does come with more and more drugs being undemonized. And, like, I dare say this, too. It's like, I kind of want to live in the world where, like, literally everything is legal. Because it doesn't make a difference whether it's legal or not. Because we all know, okay, there's the prohibition thing. We all know that trope. And it's a true one. It's like, it's just crime, just everything. Like, it's just bullshit when things are illegal. But also, like, there's just workarounds, too. I work in what would be described as the head shop industry. And I already knew a lot of this stuff, but I've learned even more about how, like, there's always just going to be, like, you can't have weed, but you can have Delta 9, or you can have THCA or whatever, which is, like, basically just... They extract THC from hemp, which you can legally grow, and then they harvest the hemp buds, which aren't psychoactive at all, but they spray the extracted chemical from them back onto them so that when you smoke it, and it ends up being just like real weed. And the hilarious thing is that it's like, oh, well, it's legal, you see, from that workaround, and then when you burn it and you add heat, the THCA becomes THC, but it's, it's legal to sell it as THCA because it's not THC yet until you add fire. The funny part about that is that's literally how all weed works. A coworker of mine at where I work explained, who once lived in Colorado and worked at dispensaries, that is how all weed is. And I got to have this, we were having this big meeting about it, and I got to have a fun Don Draper moment because we're selling THCA in flower form, and boy, it smells. And boy, the guys that blow glass where I work all got to try some, and they were like, I'm high as shit. And I'm like, okay, so it's real. And, she was like, yeah, but all THC doesn't work. That's why you got to cook. You can't just eat buds and get high. You got to cook it into something or light it on fire or burn the oil or whatever you're going to do.
Chemistry.
You got to heat it up. And so she said that, and she was correct. And then I got to have that fun Don Draper moment where I was like, she was like, all THC is heat activated. I was like, no, other people's THC is illegal. Ours is heat activated. Like the Lucky Strike, ours is toasted. Other people's cigarettes cause cancer. And only one of my coworkers has watched that show and got what I did. And I'm like, you're the youngest guy here. I'm surprised. But that was fun. And so, but that exists. And it's like recreational legal weed is coming here. But it's like at the same time, there's like every which way but loose, over, under, around, and through. You can just fucking do it anyway. And it doesn't matter. And head shops back in the day would sell fly agaric, mushrooms, you could kind of trip, or fucking K2 fake weed, which is basically bath salts. But it's like you're always just going to have something. Something. People are going to get fucked up, maybe on something that's not as good. And all this bad shit is going to happen. And then booze, which there is clearly no replacement for. Well, we tried making that illegal, and that just gave us John Dillinger and Tommy Guns and goddamn all this shit. And they're like, again, the government wasn't even like, oh, we did more research and realized that alcohol is not that bad. No, it's terrible for you. But they're like, okay, we're tired of getting shot. They just acquiesced. They're like, fuck it, I guess. Al Capone happened because of this, and that person shouldn't have been. So guess what? You can have beer now. And, that's how the laws work.
Didn't he die of syphilis?
He
went,
did.
insane from it? Yeah,
he turned into a dumbass. He was, one of the, shrewdest, most ruthless criminals, but he fucked a lot of whores. And then, he didn't... there were things available even... people are like, oh, people didn't know back then. It's syphilis? Oh, yeah. By, the 30s, we definitely had penicillin and shit. And he just didn't do anything about it. He would just be like, oh, yeah, pus is coming out of my wiener, but I'm not going to the doctor. And his guys are like, good idea, Al. And yep. And then he just was before they arrested him, he was sitting on his diving board in his pool at his mansion, just fishing in his pool. And everyone's like, this is fine. And he was the kind of guy that would just, good joke. And then slice your throat with a razor blade 2 seconds later. So they're like, hey, catch any fish? Great. It's no one was there to twist his arm to be like, hey, how about you go to a doctor? And so, yeah, he just died in jail of syphilis with...
There had to have been a drunk history episode on that.
That's what I'm paraphrasing, actually, quite a bit. Okay, the thing where he was in his pool, that's... Actually, that drunk history episode has that fine moment where, they kind of show him being it's there's pus coming out of my dick hole. And his guys are like, oh, are you going to go to the doctor? And he's like, nope. And good idea. That was... He's like, I want my nickname in prison to be Snorky. There was a whole thing about that. I guess to snork someone was actually cool guy slang to kill them or whatever, but now it's just funny because that's what happens in strange eons. And I do love a thing like that. It really, one of my least favorite things is people trying to be cool and intense through modern hip slang or whatever, when somebody tags something with spray paint and it's just you can't even read it. And you're like, that means don't fuck with me. And it's I think it means you're illiterate. I don't know. It's no. This square, this thing means okay, if you have to explain it to me, who the fuck walking by this train station other than the 4 other graffiti people on Reddit that you're friends with are going to understand this? You're an idiot. So, yeah. And Al Capone, who I do like in a way, but fell victim. I think I just liked Al's Place, one of the cool speakeasies over, northeast Minneapolis, which I now live within not walking but biking distance, a very cheap $3 Uber distance of, and it's closed. Thanks a lot, COVID. No, it was great. I had my birthday there.
I remember. I was there.
You were.
There are pictures.
It was a good birthday. It wasn't even 40th. Although it was sad because my 40th would end up being during COVID, and Bernard was there, and we talked about how you can go to like Alabama and pay to go hunt wild boars with a machine gun out of a helicopter, and we were going to do that together.
That was going to be the
and then we
40th.
couldn't do it. And then now it's like, I should call him. Actually, we should.
50. 50's coming up.
I think next year is coming up, and that's fine. I'm not gonna gamble with this one. I'm not gonna play with 50. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh well, there's just gonna be a new disease where we all have to like stay inside, and then I'll actually be old enough where it can hurt me. So it's like, instead of the cavalier, I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart to protect the fucking whatever of our society. But I will be the whatever of our society. That's kind of old. 50's getting there. I mean, it's not old. I know people who straight up don't even have gray hair yet at 50, but it's just like, nevertheless, you don't want to toy around with like, well, illnesses. You want to be careful. I may not look my 111 years, but I feel it. I will be Bilbo Baggins. I'll probably look like this at like 53 to be like, why don't you want to party? It's like, yeah, I understand I don't look that old, but I'm 53. Like, I'm going to bed. I'm already like that. I'm already, it was someone else's at work was having a birthday party on Friday. He's like, it's going to be chill. And I'm like, I fucking hope so. You guys, they're in their late 20s. It's like, I'm 42.
Yeah.
It better be chill or I'm not showing up.
I know exactly.
My 29-year-old wife is not interested in going that crazy. Like, Jesus, what are you expecting out of this? It's like, oh, you're going to get evicted and there's going to be like gunfire. And well, there might be, but probably not, And if so, very limited. But, yeah, let's talk about this ketamine thing, you see. Now, it is a drug. So, like, ketamine, and again, I was bringing up Macaulay Culkin and Party Monster and all that stuff, because I was, I believe, watching that movie when it came out, whenever that was. It was after the 90s. Was it like a 2001 movie, maybe? I don't know when Party Monster came out.
Perhaps, let me take a look out.
Oh, actually, no. I mean, we should find that out real quick. I forgot. Mechanical Animals is where I first heard
2003.
of it. 2003, okay. So that had, at the very least, a bigger window into the culture that was using it in New York at the time and all that. But I had heard of it. I totally forgot because I used to be one of those people that read everything in every magazine about every musical artist that I like, and there was this thing where Marilyn Manson was talking about how Mechanical Animals was largely inspired by ketamine, and again, I see it. I see it a little. Dead astronaut in space, but I knew very little about it. It was just a word in a bunch of Rolling Stone interviews. I didn't completely, Party Monster explained a little bit better, and then the first illicit ketamine that I ever did was from a real Party Monster. The real story of that. And it's also where Grandpapa, Toxic Jakob Trips, was the first person I actually did that with. But I don't even mean him, although he could have been a Party Monster Club kid, kind of, definitely. But his girlfriend, one, I guess, we'll start numbering people, because I'm not about to remember names, but Haley, she had a friend in New York who was the kind of fellow, Darby is his name. He is no longer with us, but he was a real party monster, that guy. He looked in pictures, and I'll show you sometime, but he looked like, with better teeth and everything, a young, handsome, right now Freddie Mercury, like built, mustache gay dude, like just... But, like, also, like, there's pictures of him, like, painted up, with, like, devil wings and, like, the whole, like, cosplay Party Monster thing. Just this guy, and he's, like, worked in, like, a super high-end hair salon thing, like, making, like, 6 figures a few times over in New York so he could afford an apartment the size of this basement all by himself. It was just wild. But, I mean, in a nice part of Manhattan. Like, real dude. Funny guy. Never got to meet him, but like the stories I've heard is like, oh, he would have loved you. He would have like hit on you and stuff, and you would have been like sassy with him, and it would have been great. And it's very depressing. He passed while they were out there visiting him, and
I think I remember something about that.
It's very sad because they don't, when they don't make more than one of someone, when that one goes, it is very shitty. But he gave them a bunch of ketamine and blow. And they had plans for later that he did not make it to. But they did bring all that home. And it was, I mean, that was, not medical grade, but basically, I guess probably ketamine.
Kind of.
Yeah.
You do enough of it, you go into a K-hole. That's just how it goes.
And that was me and my good friend Jake were making rap music on a weekday back when I was freelancing, and it's like, oh, that sounds romantic, but it's like, oh yeah, I might have had a Friday afternoon free to do drugs and make rap, but then that Saturday night I had to answer calls to change fucking something in a video that didn't matter. Whatever. I do believe 8 to 5ing it. 9 to 5ing it is better than 25-8ing it. So, but in that time, we were doing that, and I was like, this is wild, and it also was sort of mystical because of where it came from. And all psychedelics definitely have mysticism attached to them. And I was like, this is fun. I liked it. And it was just weird, but I feel that its therapeutic use is probably better.
Can I mention something really quick? Because it's kind of actually, and I'm preemptively apologizing. It's not a psychedelic, it's a dissociative.
It is a dissociative.
It can have psychedelic, well, it does, for some people, have psychedelic.
For me, for instance.
Effects, yes.
Yes.
But it's not classified as psychedelic.
I feel that is
just for somebody, who's out there who's like, I want to learn the facts about ketamine. Oh, there you go. There's a fact.
I still think those facts might be a little misaligned, though, because I do believe that categorization is some Nixon-era war on drugs. It is a dissociative. It's a different...
I'm going by what our clinic, my doctor, told me. So
no, I understand that. But here's the thing about all that stuff, is it's pretty, it's pretty functional, I've heard people like, Terrence McKenna talk about how, when you do mushrooms, for example, and we've been doing those the longest as a species, as a race, as a thing, as an organic flesh pile.
And as us.
And as us, yes. The longest also. But those should always be your first love. And ultimately maybe your last. But the stoned ape hypothesis that mushrooms are, if you had that first Mudvayne album, that is Terrence McKenna talking, by the way, much like how it is Bill Hicks on that Tool record. Mm-hmm. But they have these people, these guys in these bands, and the stoned ape hypothesis is that when whatever we were right before humans started eating mushrooms, and we found them in animal shit because that's where they grow. But animal shit is where you find animals go, and since we're horrifying predators, that's what we were looking for. But we'll eat anything. We're omnivores too, So we ate those, and then we started opening our minds. That weird 2 million years where the brain doubled in size for no reason, which should have taken 800 million years. It took 2. Some people do think is that, and it is by that metric. Some people consider alcohol to be a psychedelic, and I agree with that a little bit. It depends on who you are, and it helps if you're me. But that you can meet the deepest part of your weirdness, like an Amanita muscaria mushroom, which is qualified. Well, it's a deliriant. This is a dissociative. Alcohol is also kind of a deliriant, but kind of a it's anything that gets you outside of yourself in order to better meet yourself in some weird parallel is, to me, psychedelic, sort of.
And you're not wrong at all. I was just being that annoying person that...
Well, and scientifically and classification-wise, yes.
It's a dissociative anesthetic. It was an anesthetic used... That was the first thing it was used for, to put people under for surgery. Which
is crazy, because I did talk to my attending nurse a little bit about that, how it's Alexis at her job as an EP tech, electrocardio, they use ketamine still right now as to put people under or whatever. And it's so wild to me that this thing that is just, well, it just knocks them out or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but like a little bit of it just makes you commune with the internal workings of the universe.
When you go online and you look at some reviews of like people who've been on ketamine, there'll be a couple of people that'll come in and be like, they gave it to me for my surgery and I had like the worst time, like 'cause they didn't give them enough or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were just kind of like stuck. So that's kind of scary.
Well, it's interesting. Well, and not everyone's a psychonaut. And that is the first point I wanted to make. And I even brought this up with the people there at the time after I'd come down a bit. Mm-hmm. And that they gave me a little bit more than they gave you at the get-go. And this is a funny thing that only happens to me. There was no reason. I was talking to the guy that owns and runs the entire place at the end. And he was just like, how about the dosage? And I was like, I mean, like, I've never done this. But it's like, I'm the kind of guy that's done, enough acid and mushrooms to see the inside of a Denny's light up like the Predator ship at the end of Predator 2 and Danny Glover saw all their alien hieroglyphics and stuff. And like so it's like I, like Hunter Thompson, am okay with seeing my dead grandmother crawling up my leg with a knife in her teeth. But, a suburban housewife that's like, this might help with some of those issues you're having. I was like, I don't know that they could handle what you just gave me. And then his response to that is like, yeah, we gave you kind of a lot. Wait, why did you do that?
What I thought...
I think it's very... I mean, it was the right move. Honestly, it was. But what did you see? What did I say that made you go,
it's really not
here.
That much, but it's not that... It goes by weight, okay? I weigh more than you. I'm pretty sure.
And I weigh less than I did. I've been losing weight. But still, I'm a heavy. Me light is in the 220s, which even for a dude at like 6 feet even is like.
At that, they should have given you probably 45 instead of 50, but a 5 milligram difference wouldn't have.
Okay.
Wouldn't have done. Just saying. As a person who has jumped up from, they started me at 45 and I eventually got to 70 pretty quickly. The difference between 45 and 50 is like nothing. Okay,
well then, and there I want to see what my.
To me, everybody's experience is unique. And
there's no such medical. The medical world is designed for the average person, and there's one problem: there's no such thing as the average person, and I, very firmly believe that.
Like 50 milligrams, you like pretty much lost your mind. I
found it. I think.
Well, you know what I mean, right? You're out of the.
But room. I mean, I was not human. I will explain this, by the way, if you're still listening.
I still am able to look at the time and know how much time I have left.
No.
And no. But then I can go. I can zoom in and out. I have I'm not trying to keep control, but I do have it.
And I guess, to your point, I do remember thinking that if I had to, I probably could have fought my way. I couldn't have, ran in a straight line if I needed to, if the Terminator showed up, or driven a car at all. No. But I probably could have fought my way to being able to hit the nurse button or something. I probably could have done it. So, yeah. All right. I really just want to talk about the experience itself, and I might be skipping a bunch of shit.
That's okay.
And... the preamble is all about how, like my Facebook post from earlier, and probably if you're listening to this, you're probably also someone who's been seeing that, so... but I made a point about how, Hunter Thompson was correct to hate Richard Nixon as much as he did. I didn't understand it when I was younger as a fan of his and reading all of his random writings and stuff. But yeah, no, that guy, and in 1994, a guy that worked for the Nixon administration fully came out and was like, yeah, we invented the war on drugs so we could attack war protesters and black people by making everything that they use illegal. But unfortunately, that definitely included LSD. I think there was more to it though, because acid was all, again, if you're a Mad Men fan, and it's all I care about, it was a thing where they were helping. It was it wasn't just a street drug initially. It was we're using this to help cure alcoholism and whatever. And it's that was its early weird beginnings. And had we been allowed to just do that for the past 70 years, we'd probably be in a better place. Mm-hmm. But my version of better is scare tactics and scarcity and divisive propaganda don't work anymore. And it's I think that's better. But if you own a giant corporation that lobbies the government to change the laws around you, it's because everyone's just going to go along with it. It's like you might be terrified by that thought. Because no longer will you be able to save oil profits by telling everyone that if they drive an electric car, they're gay. They're just going to laugh at you and not care. So it's going to be, I think it's more of a feature than a bug that whole thing happened. But now, as someone once said, the genie doesn't go back in the bottle. It's like, it's interesting. I may not live to see where this goes, but this is happening now. It's not they're going to be like, we're making ketamine treatments illegal. It's like, it's getting harder and harder for them to go back on things.
Yeah.
Like, the abortion thing is like one giant problem that's a whole thing, but it's like a lot of other stuff, and eventually that'll get re-swept up into it too. It's like, it's a joke. Like, they just don't have not that many people are stupid enough anymore. It's like, they're very stupid, but everyone, there used to be more people that were stupid, and the average across the board was way stupider than even the dumbest people we have now, even though they're awful. I don't want to give them any credit, but you kind of have to. It's like, it's just not, like, things are like, well, who wants abortion to be illegal? Like, what, 32% of them? It's like, it's kind of nothing, and it's all, like, tricks and smoke and mirrors and fascism and jokes that make that happen. But it's like, dude, when the majority, and by the way, we all talk to each other now, like, really don't want something to be a certain way. It's a matter of time before the Reaper comes for you, and everyone's acting like it's still the mid-70s as far as their political career goes, but it's just kind of like, you might get vivisected by, I don't know. The people you're up against might be pacifists or whatever, but then there's people like me who younger people kind of tend to listen to, and sometimes I have ideas. And, it's like, if you do that, you'll become as bad as them. It's like, no, they gerrymandered things to take away the rights of people that look different. All we're doing is cutting a guy into little pieces for as long as we can without him dying. And that's one guy. It's not that bad. You know who you are. But the whole matter is the whole, like, oh, drugs are illegal and psychedelics. Yeah, psychedelics are especially illegal because, there's that, you can watch that old black and white video where they gave LSDs to, like, soldiers or whatever, because, they always experiment on that, but they're like, oh, they didn't listen to orders anymore, not just because they were out of it. They were just like, why would we do that when we could go read a book under this tree and giggle or whatever? It's like a famous thing, and it's like kind of the most telling reason why they're like, don't just give people this. They're not going to go like, it's good that my rent's going up because someday I might be a landlord and then I'll have money. That idiocy flies out the window when you, like, take mushrooms and you're like, they're trying to make a monkey out of me. Like, and then there's a run on the bank. So, all that notwithstanding, I decided that, all right, let's start at the beginning here real quick, and I'll go through this as fast as possible. So I have a bit of anxiety. It comes from a thing called developmental trauma. And in case anyone near and dear to me is watching this randomly, it happens. I won't go into it. So, sometimes people have that. And, originally, ketamine, as far as its legal sort of medical thing, was designed to help treat PTSD because they really do think it helps restructure neural pathways, which are sort of malleable. It's like when weird, bad things happen to you, like let's say you're in a war, and, there's like, you had to kill people and they were probably just trying to pay for college too, or, protect their house from you coming and blowing it up at the behest of Halliburton or whoever. And so, like, you don't want to murder those people. It's like, you don't even want to murder people who are really bad, let alone people who are just trying to, get squeak by. And you got to live with that. But now it's time to put on a tie and go home and sell insurance. Yeah, that sticks with you. And so a lot of PTSD and trauma and whatever comes from all that stuff. And so they were like, all right, ketamine seems to be the kind of thing, along with therapy, that can kind of help restructure neural pathways back to where they need to be. Now, I'm a guy with anxiety, not really with depression. And our psychological medical system is very weird in that anxiety, depression, it's like things are for one and not for the other. Like almost everything that was meant to treat my anxiety was an off-label antidepressant, which just, again, has made me fat and didn't work because I have anxiety. I don't have depression. There's some depression in the far-off branches, like the siblings of grandparents and stuff, but it's like, yeah, that's not really my thing. My thing is, I feel like a cat that you're trying to get into the bathtub all the time. That's not good for you. And it's based off nothing. Everything is fine. Again, life's terrifying. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate drops to 0. But on the day-to-day, you're probably okay. And there's no reason to think otherwise until you actually have to deal with it. And that's a hard thing to learn. But, interestingly, PTSD and anxiety have a lot in common. So despite the fact that your insurance might only pay for ketamine if you're depressed, realistically, it does a lot for anxiety. And there's a whole fun story about how I kind of had to go like, it's like, well, I'm kind of anxious. And they're like, yes, this would definitely help with that. However, insurance won't pay for it unless you're kind of depressed. I mean, do you ever get depressed? And I was like, well, I mean, I have my ups and downs. Like, how low are the downs? Like, it can be a real bummer. It's like, all right this way, sir. And, that's America for you. That's a whole thing. But regardless, feel kind of blessed to be involved with the sort of organization that doesn't even bother nudging you and winking you under the table. They just say it with a straight face. And if you're smart enough, you go, aha. And then off you go into the program and your insurance pays for crazy drugs. And yeah, like that's a whole thing in and of itself. And again, the Adderall, once I was actually finally at like 42, diagnosed with ADHD, I am mostly a lot less anxious, to be honest. Like, I don't feel like I'm in fight or flight all the time. And, it's funny why someday mental health should really be a matter of public health, because I use myself as an example. I'm a big guy. I'm old, but I'm kind of strong, even though I don't work out a lot. I do. I'm one of those people that is unfortunately a natural athlete, which means if you don't actively work out all the time, it makes you fat, because that's just part of the thing. But yeah, no, if I decided that I wanted to cause a serious problem for a lot of people, right up until they gun me down, I could get pretty far. And I don't say this because I want to. I don't really want to, but I'm just saying from being, like a 6 foot tall, like 230-pound guy that barely has a gut, if you want to know just the football player size of me under this suit. Like, and I'm also very, very, very intelligent. So it's like, if I snapped but kept my wits around me, the amount of people I could take down before federal marshals got to me might be a record. Now, to go, yeah, well, we don't want you to do that, so you should probably get some help, and then go, but of course it's very expensive, and we put a lot of barriers in the way. But it's not a me problem, is it? Like, yeah, no, I get if you're like a weird little like theater kid and you're like, I'm very nervous, and it's like, well, you better get your shit together and get some help. Yeah, fine. If that kid can't get their shit together and can't get help, we lose one person, and that's bad. But someone like me, it's not, if you're thinking, oh, are you alluding to a mass shooting? It's like, no. Think more like Speed or Silence of the Lambs. Or matter of fact, put those two things together and then go, well, he should have gotten help. And it's like, tell that to that entire state we lost. I'm like a character from The Stand. But luckily, again, I have good people in my life. Everything's fine. But just imagine that bad.
Did you just compare yourself to Randall Flagg?
Well, somebody's got to deal with the situation here. And
Jesus Christ.
Well, but I'm not comparing me. I'm like, take just someone with my role-playing game stats.
Okay.
And just stick it to, like, someone who's, like, way unhinged. And go, like, oh, but it should be their problem to fix their own mental health. Like, I always liked the Dark Knight theory that the Joker in that was actually an ex-military guy. It's like, why does he know how to use rocket launchers and all these things? It's like, was he really a comedian, or was that just kind of a funny, like, way to put it? But, he talks about, a bus full of soldiers gets gunned down and no one bats an eye. And it's like, there's a lot of clues. So it's like, he's hand to hand, he's very strong, like all this weird shit. And it's like, okay, yeah, no, imagine someone like that and going like, it's not our job to make sure that doesn't happen. It's like, that person should be self-reliant. And it's like, yeah, well, they chose to be the Joker, though. I mean, like, whoa. And if you ain't got no Batmans, you got a problem. And so, yeah, this is my whole tirade there wasn't really about me. It's just I'm not even a worst case scenario. There's people bigger than me. And there's people smarter than me. Like, there's people that are 300 pounds. There's people like, that are like John Cena-sized people that also like know how to rig explosives and also avoid local laws and getting caught for things that are like, I have fucking had it. And it's like, if you go, well, mental health is just an individual issue, it's not a matter of public health, but things like that exist. Things like that can happen. And the kind of, again, the Nixon era war on drugs thing, the thing where it's like, we shouldn't be using these psychedelics, which clearly help people, particularly like the kind of people coming back from war zones and things like that, which exacerbate, like Rambo and stuff, how the original one wasn't him with like exploding bows and arrows. It was like he was like a drifter that just kind of got chewed up and spit out by the military industrial complex, and it's just like, they used to trust me with $1 million equipment, now they won't hire me to park cars. Like, that movie was weirdly heady and weirdly realistic about the whole, like, yeah, like our society is this meat grinder that just creates killers and then goes like, well, lots of luck, good thing this will never come back to haunt us. It's like, I hope you guys don't organize ever. It's, and I'm not saying that like mental health is some cure against people who have truly had it with society's ills, but it is like, hey, look, if you're going to blow something up, it should be because you absolutely have to, and because things have just gotten to that point, not because a voice in your head tells you to, because you've been pushed past the point of reasonable, whatever, like you've just been, pressure's been applied until something very important snapped, but you still have the skills and physical acuity to be a giant thorn in the side of, a lot of things. And I talk about that again because ketamine originated as sort of a PTSD thing. But a lot of us have sort of a low-grade PTSD from, dealing with narcissistic people or like just whatever we have to go through. It's like I work. The owner of the business I work for is a refugee from Palestine, his whole family. And I mean, like, if I'm a little on edge through the life that I've had, it's like I would not trade for millions of dollars. Everyone, those folks that I am around regularly have managed quite a bit, and it is, and that's just a thing that happens. That could be any coworker, that could be anyone you work for or work with or something, has gone through shit you can't even fucking imagine. And to take away something that it's like, hey, this helps with that, and we're gonna make it weird and illegal or kind of awkward to talk about, which is why I'm talking about it now. It's insane. Like, if you have a headache, you take an Advil. If you grew up in a war zone and you got separated from your family, maybe you take some ketamine. You don't just take things away like that. Like, it's insane. Because real shit happens to people all the time. And everyone just keeps on living and interacting with each other and creating the lattice work of society that we have. And so, again, this whole thing is not really about me. Like, I have my anxieties, I have my hang-ups, I have my stuff that I would like to do better with. And this is a methodology for me. But I also say that, like, the beautiful thing about it is, even if you're, or particularly if you're on the right Obamacare insurance, it will just pay for this. It's not a thing where rich people get to have fun and get their problems. It's not a concierge doctor thing. Like, you got to do some paperwork. You got to have some meetings. You got to go through it a bit, but you can get in. And it could be so unbelievably useful and healing for people that it's like, it's kind of new. But I think it's very important. And as far as my experience goes, again, I've already just yelled about so much crazy shit here. But I went in with some intention. I went in, as someone who sort of believes that psychedelics are the window to whatever real. There's no such thing as physical spirituality. But a spirituality that's not just a construct, something that may actually be a thing, depending on how you define things, I guess. And yeah, like I sat in a chair in a nice office in Minnetonka and talked to some nice people and got an IV put in my arm. And then I was not a person for a while. I was spread throughout the universe, whatever that actually is. I saw with my eyes jammed very shut a lot of shifting sands and serpents. And, snakes are they're a happy thing for me if you're familiar with me at all. And they are kind of a magical thing for me also. And I was having a conversation with something that, again, was everything and nothing all at once, and it was a part of me. So rather than going, hey, like asking questions, I was just referring to myself as we, which is how I was also referring to whatever I was talking to. It was like, we know that everything will be okay. And I was being very vocal because I got a lot out of it because I don't have any sort of thing where I get embarrassed, like I knew that people could probably hear me through the door. I was listening to a little bit of music, but like I was like hissing and growling and like kneading the arms of the chairs and just having this like very writhy. I'm a writhy psychedelic guy. I already knew that. I'm a writhy vocal psychedelic guy. I know, like I don't just like hunch over and stare at the floor. I'm just kind of just having this conversation with myself. Like it had to be something.
Possessed?
Well, yeah, I think so. Like I think that very much whatever spiritual thing that's a part of us all and inside and through, everyone, that was a big thing that was happening. Like, and I could understand if psychedelics are very old and people have been taking them forever. And I've even seen Alexis take, mushrooms and witness her acting like a witch in a satanic orgy. Mm-hmm. Like very much you can just 1-to-1. You're not like it's a coincidence that you see this, and there's also these old writings about it. It's like, oh, I get what happened. You saw that, and then I was doing something that again, like some more learned person, but some shamanistic person channeling a deity or whatever. Yeah, that's probably how I was acting in that chair. Because I wasn't part of myself. When I was coming down and they were talking to me and stuff, I was like, I'm becoming more human again. Like, I was just being like, but I wasn't trying to be weird. It was like, that's exactly how I felt and exactly how I was communicating where I was right then. And, I think that kind of experience, again, we had like a 50, 60 year break from that being any kind of remotely legal thing. It was like, the mid 1960s, and they're like, LSD is not a legal thing, but it was, a psychiatry office type of thing, like right before then. And, they'd give it to people and talk to them about stuff, and they would like cure people of alcoholism and stuff. Like it was pretty wild. And then they were like, yeah, we can't be giving people this or whatever. And we had this whole mess. And the good that it could, we would live in such a, you and I, and whoever's listening to this, in such a different world right now if there hadn't have been that break. And I kind of like, I want to be grass is greener or whatever, like, I want to be like, well, maybe we needed to appreciate it more. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I think this one's an L. Like, I think that, like, they were figuring it out because their first thing was using it, MDMA too. Like, these things were being used in therapy. And it was very, very powerful. And it's like, one could argue, it's like, well, maybe it could have fallen into the wrong hands and be used for mind control. It already did. They made it illegal. And then people who could just have illegal things and do whatever they want, the CIA, could just do that. Like Operation Midnight Climax and MK Ultra and the whole Charles Manson thing, where it's just like, we're going to try to use this for nefarious things and average people can't have it. And it's like, it's for your safety, which is never, ever anything. It's like maybe seatbelts, those became a law. It was going to be about money, really, because you can't have all this like mortality and stuff, whatever. But it's like, at least it's like, well, okay, like it ends up being a worthwhile thing in the end. But nevertheless, anything with drugs having to do with your safety is just fucking bullshit. Like, it's all about the implementation. Like, as I was talking to my boss about this too, where there was apparently a guy who is also since died because he was a big drug addict, but there was a guy that was a glass blower once that like passed out into the torch, like just fell. And like apparently what the deal was is that he had been, he'd be up for 30 hours. Like any studio that they'd be like, are you going to be here all night? They just let him do it. And it was just because he was on speed. And so it's like another glassblower was telling me about that, and my boss was like, yeah, that guy, I mean, everything he did, he got a lot done and it looked great, but then it would like fall apart on the inside. And I was like, that's funny because that's like, you talk long enough, you eventually bring up the Third Reich. Yes, they were giving people Pervitin and shit that like legal, not legal, it's not legal now, whatever. But they were just giving people like basically amphetamines and stuff. And it was exactly what happened. It's like we have more tanks, and we have all these people, and they all have their uniforms, but the tanks would like fall apart. Like it was a mess. Like it didn't like whenever any society's like, we're just gonna give everybody speed and we're gonna kick everyone's ass. It just always collapses from the inside. And that guy was like a capsule. I forget his name. I never met him anyway. But like, you know, of that whole thing. So it's like you got to go like, okay, yes, we have to be responsible with drugs, but isn't it wild that usually the worst stuff that happens is just a thing like the military going, we're gonna give you all speed. It's not like we're gonna give you the option to do this. Like, if you live in a society that's not just this, like, work yourself to death at all costs, weird winner-take-all, zero-sum capitalism game, it's like, who would want to do meth in that? But when it's like, yeah, everyone starts with it's just like, well, you gotta be, they've eaten up all our free time. I want to do art projects. It's like, we just gotta, like, go. And it's like, I still have to clean my house. And it's like, okay, but what if you don't live in that hell? Then what's the allure of this thing? It's like, well, I don't know, maybe on a long weekend. Like, it stops being important. So it's like, the point I'm making is like when they're like, oh, we shouldn't have these drugs. It's like the people who make you not have them are the reason that they would be bad in the first place, because they'd be implementing them in a way that was god fucking awful. Or at least creating the environment where, of course, you want to just take opiates because you live in god awful poverty somewhere in the South. In the Ozarks or something, and there's just no hope, and you just kind of want to forget how rotten and disgusting and desperate your situation is, or in the inner city, or wherever the heroin is fun, you know, like where you're just like, if you're like, yeah, I went for a walk today, and my job was fulfilling, and it took up 5 hours of my day, it's like, you want to do heroin in a needle? It's like, no. You probably don't. You know, but again, like if you've gone through some shit, you might want to do some ketamine in a needle administered by professionals who are there to make sure you don't have a heart attack or flip out and you have a ride home.
Yeah.
And that is the world we should live in. Now, I did a terrible and aimless job of explaining this whole thing, but I think the important matter is I've gotten it out of my system, and it is now 10 minutes to the end of the episode.
We're actually going to do Dear Asshole, or are we feeling?
Well, of course we are. Dear Asshole, and you know what? Maybe the universe will give me a gift for playing along. Maybe, you know, or not for playing along, but for kind of going with the flow. And hopefully doing a bit of a service to anyone listening. If they're, you know, again, the people on Facebook were like, that's a thing, I'm very interested in this. I'm like, you can do it. Because again, you did this before me. You're the reason I know what this is. But I have a little bit of like a social media platform, so I tend to get a little bit of the credit when I'm like, hey, there's a place, you can sign up for it. But I'm just a bigger loudmouth, and you know.
Well, there's several places throughout the Twin Cities.
Oh, and there are, but there's people that aren't aware that there's anything whatsoever, and you know, and I have now a little bit of personal experience to be like, look, it's going to be some paperwork, and you're going to have to go through some shit. But it's like probably anyone asking me about it is probably checked more boxes than I have, honestly. Like again, someone else at work who would benefit from it was a little worried that like, oh, I don't know, what do you have to do? And I'm like, well, you have to have been on at least 3 antidepressants, and you have to try blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, yeah, like I did that by the time I was like 15. I'm like, oh, then they'll take you, yes. And like, well, I kind of drink a lot, and it's like, I got in, so you're fine, my man. Like, whatever, like, if there's anything in this life besides music and entertainment that I will feel a little bit good about doing on a public forum, it's that being incredibly open with all of my bullshit to a wider audience has perhaps nudged some people who didn't realize or were afraid to go like, I should sign up for this, and maybe it makes their life better. I don't know. Like, I can always, when St. Peter gives me the old crook eye, I'll be like, hey, I did more harm than good if you really do the math. Man, that was such a nice Jack. Hey, when you get to St. Peter and he gives you the old look in the eye like you're a piece of shit and you belong in hell, you go, listen, pal, do the math. I did more harm than good. That's what old Jack Burton says. My wife will love that I did that. Anyway, this book, Dear Asshole. You know what I will take a break from? Explaining it.
Thank you.
Nope, it's just this awful thing that I have to read now. And each page is a tear-out thing when you can't write your own passive-aggressive notes, which I don't know what level of passive-aggressive that is. Handicapped aggressive. It's just terrible. The people that wrote this are bad people. And I have it in my hands and I have to read it to you. That's all I really need to know. So I am going to read a page from Dear Asshole, and this one is Dear Asshole Backseat Driver. This has hope. This might be half reasonable. I don't know. I don't read ahead. That's part of the fun. Dear Asshole Backseat Driver, if I'm driving too fast, it's only because I can't stand to be in the car with you any longer.
Not hate it already.
Yeah, so you're going to risk everyone's life on the road for your personal bullshit. Again, a couple of, like, Karens. It's like,
right.
Well, Karens are usually straight white. Nope, they can be anyone. Yeah, that's an awful reason to do anything. You're making me nervous with your theatrics, which is probably because of how close you're driving to someone. Let me just say, too, when people are like, I'm a good driver, but then they're an inch behind someone on the freeway, it's like, well, they shouldn't be going this slow in this lane. You're a bad driver. But you're a bad driver. But they need to know that's not teaching anyone anything. You're just risking everyone on the road's life. Well, no, they shouldn't be able to. The internet is crazy. When you see any YouTube video where someone gets into an accident from tailgating, like, well, the guy in front should go to jail because he should be. It's so deeply ingrained that it's, okay, look, when you're on certain social media platforms, people are awful and everything, but often, cooler heads prevail. Like, it's like, hey, this minimum wage job shouldn't have treated this guy like this. We're all on the same page. But when it comes to driving, they're like, no, tailgating people is good and right. And it's like there are fucking 17-year-old Antifa, Gen X or Gen Z people who are like, everyone should be fair to everything. But it's like, I have to prove something to this slow car in front of me. I'm like, wow, this is deep into our society. Crazy. I'll never bow down to the automotive industry or big oil. You already have. So you're making me nervous with your theatrics, clutching your seatbelt for dear life and slamming your foot on an imaginary brake, which I do a lot. Pedal every time you want me to slow down. Not because you're about to kill us and I'm just having a nervous reflex until I get enough ketamine to accept my fate, I guess. But and that's before we've even left the driveway. You're making shit up. People did this when you were driving like a stupid bitch on the freeway right behind someone for no reason. There was a reason. There's no reason to do what you're doing. Like, almost getting into a car accident is not... The cemetery is full of people who, I prove my point. Great. That's never happened in the driveway. You're just making shit up. You're an idiot. So I know what I'm doing. No, you don't. So get off my case. Stop frantically asking about the status of my blinker and enjoy the ride. No one does that. No one talks to you about signaling. Everyone knows that sometimes you have to not signal because people like you see a signal and speed up. Because I don't want you in front of me because maybe you're not going to go fast enough into the car in front of you because I don't understand physics because I'm an American person alive right now. Like, I don't listen to all that science. I did my own research, and it says if there's a Prius in front of me, he could pass through the giant truck that's cool in front of him to let me go through that truck, because everything is a ghost on the freeway, because I'm already dead because I drive like a fucking retard.
This is just you, finally letting out all your stress about your old job.
No, I have felt this way about driving. Never have I been a passenger at my old job. Actually, when we would just get in the car.
No. I'm not talking about you being a passenger, but just knowing how everybody else drives.
No, but that's just driving anywhere. This predates even that job. Like that.
Okay.
I mean, I hear you.
For me, I guess maybe I was projecting for me.
No, you're projecting for you. Because that job, I was angry with all the Trump hicks I had to occasionally get out of the car and talk to. That was my problem. The closest I've ever gotten to shooting someone in the face in cold blood and just going there's kind of though, outside of this, no motive and no real, they'd be like, well, where were you at this time? And I'll be like, lawyer. And it's just I don't know. The guy at Buffalo Transmission might have been dead and nothing would have happened. So, I don't know. That was my thing more than the driving. I was off the rails before. I was driving to my thing where I was a little bit of responsible for the subprime loan mortgage crash years and years ago, and we lived together. I already had these opinions about people on the road. So, and my, and very little opinions about how mortgages worked, which is probably why I should not have been in charge of so much of that stuff for fucking no reason at a weird temp agency job. But
all right. Mm-hmm.
That's how everything goes. I know what I'm doing, so get off my case. No, you don't, and you're an idiot. Stop frantically asking with a blinker, blah, blah, blah. And next time, you can drive, because I'd rather walk there than listen to one more lecture about tailgating! That's not a good thing to do. Like, and there's people watching this right now. Maybe people maybe Brad Birch is even like, well, that's how they know they did something wrong. You get real close to him. I'm like, that's stupid. You're stupid. Brad, you probably aren't. It's because we were talking about you earlier. You're probably not like this. You're probably a very reasonable driver, I would imagine. Big guys don't have that kind of small dick energy. But the thing where tailgating is a human right. It's like I'm in a video game and I need to figure this out. Like, it's like you think that you putting yourself in a position where you're going to get very grievously hurt is this weird right you have to show everyone on the road who isn't going fast enough, which at this point is like, oh, you're only going 19 over the posted limit. What's wrong with you? Are you gay?
I feel like this one, out of all of them, has been the most, like, potential satire where they kind of are, like, going all the way back around. It's like, so they're the...
Maybe.
You know what I'm saying?
But if it weren't for the rest of the book, though.
I know.
It's like talking about, like...
See, this is what I thought
you can't do blackface in a vacuum. There's historical context. And I believe that the earlier part of this book is the reason you can't go like, see, I'm making fun of tailgaters. Yeah, you have not earned that social capital with the rest of this godforsaken fuck-ass book. Like, you just haven't. Lecture me about tailgating, and that's the thing. When you're reading, even like like Reddit or like things that are like, again, like Reddit's like not a monolith, but areas of it that are like, oh, it's reasonable people. They'll be like, well, though the person in front should have. It's like great, but you should never have done what you did and what you were trying to do. It is a compound, weird, like a 4-dimensional piece of origami for me to like go the tailgating thing with you goddamn fucking stupid people. Like, it's like all the explanation is always like, yeah, but see, the person in front of me shouldn't have been doing this. But you're acting like driving really close behind somebody does something. Like, that's the weird thing. It doesn't. Like, it's not right or a good idea or whatever, but also it's not like, okay, like, yeah, maybe like, jacking off 10 times a day feels good, but eventually it's like it'll inflame your prostate or something. It's like, okay, yeah. But yeah, I get it. Jacking off feels good. But it would be like, no, I put a knife under my fingernail because there's demons in my blood. And it's like, well, okay, but at least everyone knows that putting a knife under your fingernail feels good. No, the fuck it doesn't, you psycho! Jesus. That's what tailgating is. It's like going... yeah, sticking a knife under my toenails feels as good as jacking off. No! What? Where are you getting that from? It's of all of like the genocides and war crimes in history, I could walk backwards through the steps and go, I see how this happened. Tailgating is like, well, it proves that I'm American. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, your parents fucked you up, obviously. And drank while they were pregnant and dropped you on your head and you ate lead chips, and I get it. And so you're kind of here. But nevertheless, you'll manage to get your life together and be like, okay, but like, I get it. I shouldn't hit my kids. And it's like, yeah, I cut down. I was smoking 8 packs a day. I'm down to 1. It's not good for you. And it's, I used to like kiss up to my boss thinking that would get me ahead, but really he was just using me, and I was doing that whole Frank Grimes thing from The Simpsons where it's like, whatever, it's like, I get it. But driving really close behind someone going 150 miles an hour, I know I shouldn't, but it helps. It doesn't help, you idiot. But anyhow... I hope I lose subscribers from this. I don't want the kind of people that are like, well, but... no. Please, go listen to Ben Shapiro. That's who I think you are. Ooh. Anyway, back off. P.S. How much slower do you want me to drive? We just got passed by a fatty on a Razor scooter.
Wow. All right. Cool.
The 2 lesbians that wrote this book, I will say, I can't imagine coming in at less than a G put together. But apparently, they are the lesser of three evils.
The Reverend John Wheeler podcast takes zero responsibility for the words, actions, or ideas of its host, guests, or listeners. Though the people on the screen may at times be speaking directly to you and may occasionally give you direct calls to action, neither Reverend John nor the Alchemical Cocktail Lounge are under any moral or legal obligation to answer for the potentially disastrous repercussions that may arise if you are stupid enough to actually follow the orders of a raving lunatic. Think for yourself and do whatever you want, because you're on your own. If anyone ever tries to sue this podcast, black SUVs will converge on your location in the darkness of night and you will never be seen again. Remember to like and subscribe.